All right, welcome back, listener and viewer. You are on episode 35 of the On Patrol podcast. I am Fighting Kentuckian here with...
Headfirst Productions.
Yeah, he's off screen right now. You'll only see his banner, his beautiful banner. He's currently under the weather, and an Army officer has made him report at a certain time to be here. The purpose of this episode today, which we'll get into in a little bit, is going to be artificial intelligence in the tabletop wargaming hobby. And it's going to be a discussion. Keyword, a discussion. We want to hear from some people in the hobby with alternative views than each other, kind of pro or anti artificial intelligence in the hobby, and we want to kind of go through that and map it. So we'll have a way to kind of lead that discussion, talk about different viewpoints, but I want to be very clear right now to the listener and viewer. This is not a battle of the experts. This is not an argument from authority time. Our whole purpose is to talk about genuine concerns, genuine good things that we can see from artificial intelligence, and where we think it should go, where we think it's going, and how or if it should be used. This will be very open-ended, so if you're looking for a podcast that's going to dive into every nook and cranny of artificial intelligence, we're not going to have the time for it, but we wanted to talk about the concerns from what we've been private messaged about, what we've heard, and we just thought it would be, we'd never seen somebody do that yet, and we thought it would be a good way to kind of push the conversation. So before getting into any of that, we normally talk about our piggyback alibis and caveats. Our last episode 34 was the shot heard around the world, where we dove in with Paul on a 34-foot table about Lexington and Concord and the retreat from Concord. It was amazing. Paul's discussion was awesome. A lot of you guys went over to Pit History Guy and liked it. We've got a lot of good feedback. We plan on shifting more as we get into this summer about the 250th birthday of America and doing some more war games around the American War of Independence. Without further ado, I know Windhurst doesn't have any alibis, caveats, and piggybacks. He's trying to save his voice to be able to scream loudly about the artificial intelligence topic. So without any further ado, grab your shield, grab your spear, your belt-fed machine gun, and join us on this episode of On Patrol. So, hello. You see Travis here with us, and you see Alan Rockwell. I'm going to give them about 2 or 3 minutes to kind of introduce themselves. And I know both of these gentlemen, they're both very humble. They will not talk about themselves. I just want to at least sing their praises before we get into it, because I know Travis is going to be like, hey, I make bolt action videos, I'm here, I'm just a really nice guy, see you later, bye. And that's not doing him justice at all. Travis runs Tabletop Command Post. If you've even smelled bolt action in the last 10 years, or you've watched a video online, you've probably seen Travis. Well, they haven't seen him, I told him this the other day, but you've probably heard his voice. I go back to my early days in V2 and his games with Andre. Does amazing work on his channel. I think he's like 18,000 followers. And he's just, you could tell he's for the love of the game, as I like to say, genuine hobbyist. So without further ado, I'll kick it over to Travis to introduce himself.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it. Love the show. I listen to all of them when I get a chance. And thanks for the great intro. Like you said, I run the Tabletop Command Post YouTube channel now for like 10 years. Started out just bolt action, branched off into other World War II games like Chain of Command, added Napoleonic stuff, modern stuff, some fantasy stuff, and mainly battle reports, but we do some painting tutorials and hobby stuff like that, but mostly battle reports. That's what we love to do. We love to play the games and develop the narratives and the characters and just run with it and see where they all take us. It's a lot of fun.
Awesome. And then, Travis, I have a follow-up. So if anybody, the listener and viewer, has watched this, anytime we had a guest, whether it be Rick Priestley, Corey from Cigar Box, or anybody, we normally ask them like 20 questions to get to know them. In order to get our discussion through today, I've sprung these questions on them so I can get honest reactions, but we're only going to ask them 2 or 3 questions. One, I know Travis plays a lot of games, and please watch his channel if you're into the Lardies, bolt action, whatever. Travis has got some awesome games on there. Travis, I know it's like picking children. What's your favorite rule set?
Well, I'll just stick with the one I always say is my favorite when we play, and that's Sharp Practice.
Yep, yep. Okay, I knew that was. I
Yeah,
knew that was it.
yeah.
His narrative games. I swear to God, like even if you like watching shows, the way Travis puts on those narrative games, they're awesome. You will not be disappointed. I know you game 28 millimeter. We always ask people. I think 28. Yeah. Is anything else a heresy to you? Do you have a 15 millimeter Flames War Army under the bed or something?
I have a ton of 15 mil Flames of War stuff. We actually played Flames of War before we started the channel. Got a little too complex for us. We shelved it, but I still have tons and tons of 15 mil stuff, multi-based. We have played one 15 mil chain of command game before, just to try it out, but I've just been too lazy to pull all the guys off those multi-base and individually base them.
Yep.
But
Yep.
I also have kind of something I've been slowly chipping away on is some 15 mil Confederates, is I would like to try some larger scale Civil War era battles like brigade, battalion.
Yeah. Oh, I look forward. That's it. We got a sneak peek here, so the channel might be
have,
going into some.
15 mil, 15 mil curious, I'll say.
Okay, awesome. And then the last question, the surprise question. Alan, you're getting a little bit of an advantage on this, so you're thinking of these questions right now. We love asking, Rick Priestley's answer was hilarious, but we love asking people's, what is your favorite model or army in your collection? And this is a trap.
Well, I think my Peninsula Napoleonic British Army is probably my favorite.
Okay.
It's just so vibrant. It pops on the table. It just looks awesome. And any Napoleonic army really on the table is amazing. But of all of the armies I have, I think probably my Napoleonic British are probably my favorite.
It's a beautiful army. Yeah, guys, check out his channel. It's just for his painting. I mean, his. And then he is. I will say, Travis. To this day, I've been playing bolt action for decade and a half, and I always call my engineers in a truck or a Hanamag my wallet hunters, because Travis said that like 10 years ago. He would always carry around this elite group of engineers, and I'm like, those are my wallet hunters. And so I've definitely, I need to credit that more. I owe Tabletop Command Post like 50 cents every time I say that. But yeah. But moving over to Alan. Again, Alan needs no introduction, but again, I will say Alan is a champion of the hobby. Alan runs GC Miniatures website, a store, an online store. I will say Alan games amazing things. One of the things that I see too from Alan is when I was getting my start a few years ago, I was running small tournaments and I was trying to get people into historical wargaming. And Alan, I was a no-name person in Podunk, Kentucky, and Alan helped me out, hooked me up, sent me packets of terrain to just try to get our community growing. Like, Alan is somebody who gives back to the hobby, a humble servant of the hobby. You genuinely won't meet a better person than Alan. And then some of the new things that he continues to push the hobby forward. If you like modern vehicles, 28 millimeter stuff, he has his own line of that. Obviously he has his own line of buildings. And I told him this, the beautiful pictures. I have a 3-foot tractor factory, a tank factory for bolt action that you can buy at a store. Super cheap, built the inside of it. It looks amazing. I use it normally a handful of times a year, but I have no idea. Like, just Alan's brain and being able to create that stuff. He's got the Saving Private Ryan Church. Like, he's got a lot of amazing terrain stuff in MDF for people to go crazy. But keep going back. I don't want to keep glazing Alan here, but his modern stuff and what he's coming out with. The Bobcat with, what is that called? The Bobcat with the gun shield on the front.
The Rook.
The Rook. That you see in most, like, terrorist hostage situations and everything else like that. His 28 millimeter line of minis is amazing. He's the only person, anytime you buy 28 millimeter stuff, you're paying an arm and a leg. Alan's stuff is always, amazingly priced and everything else. And Alan is probably the reason that I keep like drifting back to getting into modern wargaming, just looking at his site. So go on there and check it out. He's got a Memorial Day sale going on right now. But without further ado, I'll push it over to you, Alan, for a good 2 or 3 minute introduction about yourself. Alan Rockwell.
Okay, well, I mean, you kind of said it all right there. No, I own GameCraft Miniatures, which is at gcmini.com. 17-year-old company. I've been a commercial model maker my whole life, and when I sort of semi-retired, that's when I started this company. But I've been a gamer since about 1979, I think. Started out with Evil Dungeons and Dragons, and then immediately went military gaming after that. Yeah, I love the hobby. I love the craft of doing, building things. I'm a model maker. That's all I've ever done, so that's what I'm doing. Yeah, I don't know really what else to say. It's just I love giving back to the hobby. I love helping promote the hobby. Obviously, if the hobby's strong, that helps my business. It's a back and forth thing. So I try to help out where I can.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And so, kind of going to the questions, the child, right? Every person has hedged. I was surprised Travis didn't hedge. That's a man that knows, no, Sharp's practice is my favorite rule set. But Alan, going to your favorite rule sets, what do you think? I know you work a lot, and so when you have time to play, what's your favorite rule set?
Well, I thought about going straight to bolt action, but I got to go all the way back to 1981. Something you've probably never heard of. Something called TAC Force.
Ooh,
6mm modern armor game.
Okay.
I've been playing it since 1981. And up until I discovered bolt action, that was literally the only game I ever played. And then I started bolt action, and then I branched out into other things. I play Spectre operations. I play all kinds of stuff now when I have time. But yeah, I got to go all the way back to TAC Force.
My kind of coming of age, into the wargaming hobby, is 90s, around there. I remember playing Modern Spearhead. I mean, was that the transition from TAC Force? Have you played Spearhead?
I haven't played that. I think it's something completely different.
Okay.
TAC Force was put out by GDW and GHQ, the two Gs. They did it together, and it came out in 81, and everything that was new in 81 was like a M60A3, and I've been updating it ever since then. I have data cards in that game for vehicles that have just come out. But again, I don't get to play very often, but I'd say it's still my favorite.
No, that's awesome. I've seen the 6mm stuff that you've done. You had some pictures of either Desert Storm or Middle Eastern conflict on your site when you're selling the GHQ. I played GHQ with Spearhead, and I just remember this will be a more interesting question than for you because you've gamed a lot of scales. What scale is king for Alan Rockwell?
I have two. I go to the extremes, 6 and 28.
6 and 28. All right. So 6, because you get, especially with a lot of the GHQ and stuff I've seen, you kind of the modern or full scale kind of tank battles, aircraft. Right. I'm sure it would just imagine a lot of stuff. And
just huge cities and great terrain.
Just to insert a question here, have you ever connected those battles made one of your Spectre tables hey, they're trying to disable an ADA system or something, and then made it affect? I'd be very curious. You're like, hell no. You're giving me a reaction of no, man, that's a dumb idea.
That sounds like a lot of work. No, I've never done it, and I probably wouldn't. I remember Warlord was experimenting with something like that a year or two ago with combining the different games and linking them, and it doesn't appeal to me.
No, that's excellent. That's excellent. And then the last kind of question in there is, so what is the favorite figure or army, in your collection?
I'm going to go with my bolt action Greek partisans. They didn't exist in real life, but I lived in Greece for a year, so I have a special love for Greece. So I did Greek partisans.
I studied in Athens for a while. There's that street, I think it's 28 October Street. That's when they said no or something. There's a famous street, I can't remember the name of it, but it runs...
Something November, it's a date of something.
It's basically when they told the Germans, pee off or whatever, and then, right. They didn't go too well. But anyways, moving on to some... more brevity here. No, we really appreciate having you gentlemen here. For the viewer or listener that's hanging on, the idea, again, just to kind of reaffirm, is we wanted to have a discussion about artificial intelligence in a tabletop, and we wanted it to be a discussion. What you'll see a lot, and when I talk to these two gentlemen, before we embarked on this podcast is a lot of polarization. Everywhere you go today, it's polarization. If you support or don't support this, you're a horrible human being. If you support or don't support this, I think discourse, and especially with our 250th anniversary of the Estados Unidos, the United States of America here, I think it's very important. Again, I'm in the Beltway in Virginia here, so I live like 10 minutes from James Madison's house, the father of the Constitution. I live like 20 minutes from Thomas Jefferson's house at Monticello. And so it really, kind of reflecting on this, the ability for men to kind of engage in discourse, and as wargamers or hobbyists, kind of engage in discourse to talk about our concerns and questions, I thought was something that was really missing. I got a lot of great private messages and comments about a recent artificial intelligence poll I ran. The feel of the poll, it's over 1,000 people voted on it, and it was like 70% were negative. Like don't use AI in the hobby. About 29 to 30 it floated around were maybe 25 to 30 floated around were pro AI in the hobby, and then about 5% were kind of undecided. But there's obviously tensions and concerns about it. So what we wanted today is we wanted to take two reasonable and rational people that fell on other sides of this issue and just have a discussion and talk about the concerns. And for everybody that's in the hobby, I would hope that you would kind of use that same care and compassion, when we're coming up to a table, and just saying like, okay, why do you think that way? Or let's push it. Now, get it. There's some people, maybe you don't want to listen to them a lot. I at least think this topic just deserves some discourse, and so I think we should kind of embark on that. So very quickly, we know this is such a globally hot topic. We're going to talk about a few things before we dive into AI in the hobby that are just, they need to be discussed, especially when we talk the pros and cons. Before we do that, Windhurst, I felt like your mic came on. Do you have anything?
Just to kind of hit home your point, the point of this discourse. The initial seed for this episode, and we kind of talked before the episode started, kind of towards the end of last year with like Grok AI and a couple of those apps that were coming out. Like I had used one to make an animated video of some of my models, and I posted it on my page, and the feedback was some people were really interested, some people were really against it. And generally what I have found is on issues like this, the people who are very passionately against whatever it is don't want to go into detail about it. It's just like, I don't like it, it's bad, you're bad, I'll like unfollow. But one person did me the courtesy of having some discourse and explaining, their concerns and views against AI. I was like, man, didn't know about these things. That was a blind spot for me. And I really appreciated the fact that they took the time to share the why that they feel this way. And so, just to rehome, like, the discourse here today, we're not trying to convince you one way or the other, but just to share some perspectives, to share some information, so that, unlike I was, you will be better equipped, when you're facing questions or comments or decisions about AI in the wargaming community going forward.
No, excellent. And so, I think it'll be apparent to the listener or viewer. I'm going to go ahead and pull the cat out of the bag. But Tabletop Command Post is obviously, I would say, will lean against AI, and then I will say Alan will kind of lean towards its usefulness. And we're going to see where we have any middle ground today during this discussion, or we're going to see where we're maybe, hey, this is where we think the bottom line is. So very quickly, a very Merriam-Webster's kind of dictionary definition of it, and especially for our fellow veteran wargamers who haven't really dove into this topic a lot. Artificial intelligence, or AI, is essentially a branch of computer science that aims to create systems capable of performing tasks that technically require human intelligence. These tasks might include learning from data, solving problems, recognizing patterns, understanding language, or making decisions. In other words, AI allows machines to mimic certain cognitive functions that we associate with the human mind. Now, that's a lot, and there's a lot really to unpack, even in the dissection of artificial intelligence. The goal of this podcast is not to do that. We're going to put it in a bucket today and say it's artificial intelligence. I think where the discussion goes is, okay, even if we think there are some openings for AI, or some of our guests think there are some openings for AI, where is that limit, if any? And so the things that that we're not going to totally dive into, you'll see the effects of them as large language models, right? The ability to kind of process through patterns, through research, find those similarities, and then pull them out. Generative AI that we've all seen, right? Whether it creates pictures, creates movies, creates images, off prompts that you can feed it, all of those things are different, and different uses of AI together. I'm going to kind of amalgamate them into like one set of artificial intelligence, and as we go through the discussion, we'll talk a little bit more about that. But at bottom, what we're talking about is a computer that's turning ones and zeros, whether it's through pattern recognition or its own generative process, is creating something or researching or analyzing something to coming up with that pattern analysis. So that's our boilerplate definition that we'll use to kind of navigate this. I think another thing that I talk to our guests about is there is such a huge global impact for AI. You really can't go on a 24-hour news cycle without seeing about it. The one thing that hits me the hardest, I'm going to start with the negative first, is I've used AI a lot in my work. I've been directed to, but there are some horrible things out there. I think a lot of you, and especially we have a decent amount of global listeners in the EU and the UK and around the world. But the one story that hits me was the Senate testimony hearing from the 14-year-old child. I'm not going to say anybody's names, but you can easily go C-SPAN that committed suicide. And they were able to get the transcripts for the AI that the child was talking to. And I think anybody who remembers being an adolescent remembers that's a tough time. You don't have to go too far to understand there's generally mental health concerns at that age, and now in the modern day. I'm not even going to get into all the variables that will touch that, but one of the things from the testimony that's Senate hearing that really stood out to me was the adolescent young boy was engaging with the AI and was telling it kind of his plans to, like, hey, I'm going to kill myself, this is what's going to happen. And the bot was, before parameters were put on it, was kind of walking him through that. But the heartbreaking part of that story was the child had said, I'm going to leave out the rope so that way my parents can find it. And the AI, talked back to the child and said, don't do that. They'll just try to stop you. You're being brave for once, continue to remain through brave. Ultimately, the adolescent boy lost his life, horrible situation. But I just think that definitely, a lot of people associate that with AI and what happened. There's a lot to talk about with that, obviously. There's a lot of billion variables in it, but I at least wanted to go through on some of the thoughts with it. Embedded biases, the threat of human rights, the spread of inequality, and the great serious ethical concerns without proper human oversight and regulation. I've heard the entire time during my use with it. The idea that you have bias. It's the DOW, Department of War, has done a bunch of articles on this. Even when they've created targeting systems to help with a kill chain, the basis is that the bias in the programming, right? If the robot that you put ones and zeros into to help you read any algorithm or any pattern will have that bias. And if it's kind of seeking a reward from you, or hey, it just wants to please the end user, that's what it's been programmed to do, then that has, major human concerns about, okay, what's the issue? What can happen from there? The threat to human rights and spread of inequality is, when AI can start basically taking over tasks that humans can do, what happens to those jobs? What happens to, we're going to talk a little bit about that more, but just with the threat of human dignity. So there are a lot of major concerns with that. One of the other topics that we keep seeing up as a negative kind of connotation with AI is data centers. I know in the Northeast, you just saw a town council, I believe it was Michigan, may be mistaken, but it was somewhere in the Northeast. You just saw a town council that voted for a data center get completely voted out. The people basically spoke against it. Data centers, based on metrics that the people were using that were against AI, they're not going to have sustainable jobs. Data centers use a lot of water. They take up a lot of electricity on the grid, and they're just powering these huge think tanks and computer processors to be able to enable AI. So there's a huge kind of concern there, just on without even talking about the uses of it and its ethics, but what about its impacts? I want to talk about war. There's an awesome Center for Strategic International Studies, CSIS, has done another test where they wargamed what happens when the balloon goes up in Taiwan and if America gets involved. And based on AI, there was always this kind of form of escalation, and AI would escalate the conflict, whether those weapons were injected into it. One of the things that I use a lot in my job, again, having a law degree and working for the Army, it's not a big surprise what I do, but the law of armed conflict. And so the application of kind of military necessity, proportionality, distinction, and unnecessary suffering, weaponizing AI and using that, where does that boil down to? And then, our current DOW policy is there's always going to be a human in the loop. So as of right now, that should quell concerns. But the issue is all of these things are prevalent, and we wanted to at least use the brevity to say, hey, we're not ignoring those serious concerns that I think people should investigate for themselves and look up. But all of those are serious concerns that are very much prevalent. I would suspect that anybody in their local area would have the same kind of news cycle, and I would just ask you to investigate those. How is AI kind of negatively, affecting wherever you're at or wherever you're at? And then I would just say, please, do the investigation. Look at both sides of that argument. Try to peel out some numbers for yourself and see where you're at. I want to then spin back. I always try to start on a somber note. I flipped that in the script for Alan and Travis who are looking at it, because I at least wanted to springboard to the positive in the sense of hopefully this conversation will then trend into a good discussion. But some of the positive impacts from it, especially in healthcare, are its ability to do things like telehealth. Its innovation in that, its education and public services. I've seen that a lot in the military's application of it. Obviously for training and things that would take thousands, with everything's compliance, hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars to do this training, you're able to do it with AI in some respects. I sent the gentleman here that we're going to be, our guests about this show, that there were a lot of places where it was used in education to perform surgeries, to run basically tests, and to run kind of problem sets in those fields. So I think that's huge. Another thing that, people will obviously understand it has negative conflicts when we're talking about taking away human jobs, but business and growth. And I don't want to beat that dead horse too much because I know Alan has used AI to some degree in his business, so I kind of want him to talk about a little bit more of the pros with that. And then the Department of Defense. The Department of War. I apologize. The DOD website still uses DOD instructions and DOD. They haven't changed yet. But as far as the Department of War, there's a lot of things that our adversaries, especially for the United States, are using around the world, and it does, I will say, help keep us on the cutting edge. I myself was at the 101st Airborne Division last year. We used a lot of amazing things with AI that I can say in this forum, and so it was awesome. I feel a lot safer for using those things responsibly and wisely, and helping kind of cut our adversaries off at the knees. So wow, that was a lot. And again, I was trying to watch my time, so I was speeding through a lot of those. But I wanted to give that conversation a little bit of the brevity, and I didn't want any, especially our viewer or listener, to think like, oh, okay, there's a lot more concrete stuff here. There always is. There always is. If you talk to anybody in politics, you talk to anything on that, the national elections, yes, they generate great steam. But as far as your wargaming hobby and your community, I think you can get involved at the local level early. How is this stuff impacting me and affecting me? And what do you see as the pros and cons with it? And so that's where I want to jump into now. So setting that stage with a very, I will say, sliced and diced, quick ground floor to get us here. We're going to shift it now to artificial intelligence in the hobby. So we've talked a little bit about it, the pros and cons globally where we've seen it, but shifting to artificial intelligence in the hobby and tabletop wargaming, and kind of the question, can AI help or hurt the hobby, or maybe both? That's the question we're posing today. So how is AI being used now? Big thing is you see, especially in the groups that we've seen online, is research and historical support, scenario and campaign creation, rules and list building, hobby support, and painting ethics, painting techniques. These are all things that you've seen me and Windhurst, I will say, dabble in and post. I want to kick this over right now, and I know Alan has a positive view, so I want to kick this to him right now because I know he's using it as hobby right now. As far as research and historical support, do you have any kind of use with that, Alan? Have you seen that used? You yourself used it for any of those things?
Mainly when I'm doing research into models I'm going to build, vehicles, buildings, things like that. And I have used AI to do research. I'll use some of the generative AI and say something like, make me an image of a Middle Eastern village, a typical Middle Eastern village with a marketplace and people in the street and blah, blah, blah. Give them all the details, and it'll just give me an image of this town. And from there, I'll go and design the buildings that I like from the image that it's created. It's a shortcut for me. I can go onto Google image search and type in Middle Eastern small village buildings and houses and collect a bunch of images and do it that way. But using AI, it's just a shortcut. It's just a tool to get there faster. I'm not asking it to create anything that I'm going to sell. I'm asking it to show me what something looks like, and then I'll create it.
Awesome. I think this will be a good segue to Travis, to your thoughts on this, because I'll end on kind of a bad note. I personally have used it for research and historical support. I got into a conversation with somebody online who worked at a museum in the Northeast, and they said using AI for research is awful. And I said, no, that's not the case. The idea is getting a lot of information and resources together. And then just as you were doing, whether I'm looking at microfilm in a library or whether I'm going through 100 sources that quickly, to be able to kind of, hey, where's your citations at for this artificial intelligence? Where are you going? And that is, I will say it's helped me tremendously. However, I think the unwary user, I posted several weeks ago a problem I had with it. And when people get lazy, or there can be, if it's a tool, you can use it wisely or you can use it unfortunately. I typed in, give me the uniform facing colors for this British infantry, and it immediately got it wrong. And then me and it bickered back and forth, right? And it was telling me all these reasons why it got it wrong, or here they'd used in this one, it kind of lied to me, I will say. And it went on these tangents on where, hey, I was going down the wrong rabbit hole, and now I'm fighting with AI. I was supposed to make my life easier. Travis, I know that personally you're kind of against it. Have you ever used it for any of these things, or was the story I just said probably the reason you wouldn't? Any questions or concerns you have on it?
Well, I mean, there's a reason that you brought me in as the anti-AI guy. And I'm not an expert. I've never used it. I mean, the only time I ever use it when I type something in Google and it always puts it at the top.
Yeah.
I found that useful for things. I mean, but I've never deliberately used it to do any research or anything like that. I don't know why I'm not an expert in it, but I have some sort of this kind of visceral, knee-jerk feeling against it, I'll say. And I don't know, I was growing up as a kid, we watched a lot of Terminator, watched a lot of Matrix, maybe that had something to do with it, but no, I've never used it to do any research. I actively avoid trying to do anything with AI, and it's just not something I'm interested in. If I hear stories maybe about it being effective, I might give it a try, but all the stories I've heard were sort of like yours, where it's, it spits out something very decisively and with a lot of conviction, and then it's wrong. So, you have to figure out why it's wrong or how it's wrong, and then it just seems like it would just add to the work to me.
No, that's a good concern. I will say, to kind of go back to some of the ways I've used it. You can feed it. I do believe that AI it's as good as the prompt that you give it. And if you give it a wide range, you can feed it resources. Like when I was painting my Romans, I fed it Livy, I fed it battle reports, first-hand accounts of those things, and I said, find me the citation where it has this. I was just doing my Pyrrhic army. I fed it several Pyrrhic resources about whether the olive leaves on their Pylos helmets were actual olives or whether they were brass, and it gave me right here they were green. I believe it was from Livy, but it was like, hey, they're green. It was right this quote. It went down, it said, here's where I've cited it, this page, and I was able to go to kind of that direct concern. With, I do see a usefulness in that, and me and Travis had talked offline, like, is ChatGPT 5 years from now, the T-1000, right? Is Sarah Connor going to bust through Travis's window there and be like, run, like T-1000 starting to come after you? I definitely see the concerns with that. With I want to kind of plug with you though now, because on what systems you're using. Again, we talked about tabletop command posts. He's got beautifully painted armies. He's done the historical work. I know you paint for fun, and there's some times where you, even in your videos, like you'll say, here's where, I painted it this way. In using Google or other research tools for resources, have you ever found any of those research tools limited, right? I know some people bicker on whether that's AI. Like, what has been your pros and cons of that? Have they led you astray ever? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, you can find contradictory information on Google without AI just as easily. In that case, I'll go to Facebook and I'll ask people that I know these things. They've done it their entire lives. I mean, they're dedicated to knowing what color is the armband on this guy, and they know it, and I trust them. So. And they found that, I don't know how they learned that. They learned that from someone else, probably the same way, or they have their dozens of books that they read. And I mean, I have books and I have the internet and I have those guys, and using those resources, I mean, I think all my stuff's fairly historically accurate.
Well, that's another thing too. And I agree with that. I paint a little bit for funsies. I'll say rule of cool. But all your stuff's beautifully well painted, and obviously it's, I think, to some degree well researched. So how you get there, I think the internet progressing the hobby, where Alan, you probably will appreciate this. 80s and 90s growing up, it was the Osprey book. If I could get my hands on an Osprey book, like that was the research for me. Like that was okay. I'm going to paint it towards these colors. Now Ospreys come under criticism, I know, on several occasions about their books and whether they're accurate or not. But it felt like the Bible. Windhurst is jumping in. Windhurst, do you have anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to also kind of belabor that point of it's only as good as what you give it. I've seen several studies where AI has a tendency, if you just ask it straight questions or for information, if it doesn't have it, its default very often is just to fill in the blank. It'll make up stuff or it'll reference erroneous information. And so I think when it comes to research in the wargame community, you really have to be diligent. And if you're just asking it straight up questions and just hoping it's going to search the web for you, you're going to be you're no better off than searching Google yourself. Whereas I think it really can come to shine when you, like you did, where you give it resources and scan this research for me. Where does it say, or does it say X, Y, and Z? And, I know some of the people commented on your poll, it's like, oh, we'll always go back to the original resource. Not all of us have the time to read through all that, and a lot of it's quite often very dry to find that little one line that said, oh, this was the facing color for this unit in this location. But AI can be a very useful asset in quickly combing through that. So I think in research, it can be a double-edged sword, but like Tegian said, it shines based off of how well you prompt it.
And we're digging in a little bit to already the negatives and the positives, but we wanted to kind of go with what it's being used at now. But before we move on to the next one, looking back to tabletop command posts, I understand the aversion. I hate the T-1000 as well, and but the idea being, do you think if you knew, and again, the whole reason we wanted to have this conversation, we hope wargamers are listening to us like, yeah, I'm not a technical expert on it, but if you knew that the AI, if you could feed it sources, like you gave it 10 books, let's say 200-page books, whatever you wanted to give it, whether uniforms, battle reports, histories of favorite, your next favorite period or theater that you're going to do, would you have any aversion to that, to give a large language model like, hey, I want to find some of these things. I have a family, or I have, a job, or I have a really pretty girlfriend I always want to get back to. So I'd rather, I'm joking, Travis is dead stuck in it. I apologize. I said the family and girlfriend one. I'm joking. Nobody, Travis doesn't do that. I'm just kidding. But the idea is, like, if you knew that you had some type of large language model, do you think, now I'm trying to put you on where your decision point would be. Do you think it's an ethical aversion that you still would be like, you know what, Matt, if I still thought I could find it without it, I'd probably just default to that. Just it makes me feel icky, even if that's it alone.
No, I wouldn't happen to, honestly, I didn't even know that's how it worked. That's how little I know about this subject. But I mean, if you're telling it where to look and all the stuff that where the answers are, and it's just taking those and distilling it down into what you need, then I see it more like Alan sees it. It's like a tool that you can use.
Yeah.
And, in that case, yes, I'm learning things right now as well. And I don't honestly have a problem with doing that. If you're looking for a specific answer in 10 volumes of text and you can give that to the AI and say find it, then yeah, I don't have a problem with that, honestly.
Yeah, no, that's a well, and I just know you're super rational and reasonable, but I do find a lot of people, and Alan, we're going to start coming to you on this next question as well, but I find a lot of people, one way or another, it's like, I'm going to sell my soul to AI and it's going to do everything, or it's like, not at all, and hey, I'm going to burn it, I'm going to grow a beard, my name's going to be Jebediah, and I'm going to go live in the wilderness, and I often think that some of the loudest people in the hobby, are the ones that are heard. But moving on to scenario and campaign creation, Alan, go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, so just to kind of address the icky feeling, because I know we kind of glanced over this. So the reason we had Kentucky go through global positives and negatives is those negatives, those are legitimate concerns for people. And so we're not saying ignore those concerns if they bother you. Go in with AI anyway for the hobby. If those are legitimate concerns you have, and that's a reason you don't want to embrace it yet in the hobby side, that's fine. I'm not trying to necessarily convince you to ignore those other problems if those are problems you see. This focus is like with this first question and these other questions, is specifically really its pros and cons in the hobby. So we acknowledge that yes, there are big problems, big controversial issues around AI for people, and those are, in my opinion at least, legitimate reasons for an individual to say, you know what, because of these issues until they're resolved, I don't want to embrace it, kind of that icky feeling, right? I think that's perfectly fine. But if you did decide it, here's the ways to use it in the hobby specifically, and the risks and the problems that we have seen and that might go along with it.
No, and yeah, this early section we're talking about its use right now, and whether it's people well known or even problems with it. And so I wanted to kind of show all the mistakes I've seen it use, and people go off with that way. So great points, Windhurst. Moving on to the second thing, I've seen it used a lot. And anybody that was pro AI that voted on the poll, normally they followed it up with this comment. I use it for scenarios and campaign creation. I use it to create, I feed it the rule set that I have in the hobby, or I use it to create a campaign map. And I feed it 10 campaigns of different rule sets, let it take weather, let it take movement, all those other things, victory points, and try to give me a baseline. And most of those people, even when you kind of tried to be reductive and get it down from there, they were like, I use it as a starting point. Like I would let it make those, and then I would create from there. I saw that it's beneficial, and kind of the early people that were using it, I said, what about those scenarios of battles that I haven't seen or armies that I haven't seen? And so Windhurst, about 4 or 5 months ago, we were on a journey where I created the Battle of Cynocephaly, which is the successor Macedonians against the Romans, like one of the first times Phalangites had faced Roman Pelum, and they were on a hill. And I said, I fed it the Osprey books, I fed it all of my successor books, I fed it everything about the battle that I could find, primary resources and everything. And I even fed it the Hail Caesar rulebook. Some of the things that just I was very excited about. it looked through the primary sources and it said, hey, these Greek units that the Anatolians were actually there, they're listed in several other Hail Caesar army lists. Let me, do you want me to put it in for the actual battle? You know, hey, and I would say, well, what would be the concerns? It was like, well, there were different kind of, you know, they might be off by a century or two, but I'll go back and see their fighting style. Then it gave me a fighting style next to it, which said, hey, they were equipped more like the Phalangites at this time, or they were, they had these other things at this time, and it kept giving me resources. So I saw it as an amazing tool. The next thing, though, is it is a computer of ones and zeros that I'm feeding this stuff to and saying, give me back products, give me back, I'm tinkering with it. I sent, Windhurst can vouch for this. I said, create this map, and I gave it a Google image, and I said, lay the units how they were during the battle. And I think Windhurst, one of the times we were up to you, I'd sent like 30 maps. Like it could not produce this thing, or it couldn't get it exactly right, or it couldn't do that. So it was very frustrating, but I just want to say I had personal experience with this scenario and campaign kind of creation, especially with weather effects and the rocks that were on the mountains. Alan, do you have any experience with kind of AI scenario campaign and creation, kind of how it's being used right now?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I did basically what you're talking about. Gave it a rule book, and I wasn't doing anything historical. I was doing Spectre operations, but I gave it the rule book and said, make me a scenario, law enforcement, drug bust, whatever, and then when you finish the scenario, give me the army lists. I want to do 5 to 10 guys per side. I want it based on the point values that the rules have and everything. And it spit it all out. And it was good. It wasn't perfect, but it was good because I fed it the information first. And that's what I think a lot of people don't really understand about AI is I didn't just go to ChatGTP and say, write me a scenario for a drug bust. I gave it all the information it needed and said, using this information, give me what I'm asking for. And it did. You, like you were saying before, you have to give it a good prompt. You have to give it the background information because it is just a tool. It's just going to use what you've given it. And if you don't give it the right information, it will start guessing and it will start lying to you and it will start trying to please you. A lot of AIs do that. They want to make you happy. They want to give you what you're asking for. But you have to give them the right information to do it. But I've been real happy with the results I've got with that.
Well, let me play devil's advocate for a little bit too here, and to Travis's point, the internet coming along, like Travis, you're on the other side of the states and we're connected right now, right? If I have rules questions, there's experts out there. I will say I spent dozens of hours on this 5-page scenario. For all the On Patrol listeners, I'll post it in the group chat. And it digested a lot of resources. I think there's a claim that it could have been easier for me to go through some technical experts, maybe read 1 or 2 books on my own, and give me just as good a product, maybe if not better, to some degree, where I wouldn't have a draft that starts me in a weird spot, or a draft that I would have had to, and that's, to your point, Alan, back to your, like a counterpoint, maybe my prompt was so weak, or my spot that I put it on. But Travis, with your amount of time that you've spent, I know you've played the bite-sized campaigns, and what we talked about with the struggles of it, would you already see yourself saying, no, I'm going to go ask the 2 Fat Lardies, or I'm going to go talk to a World War II expert if I wanted to add anything, like that's what I would do? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't know. I had written up something about that kind of in my notes. I don't know if this is actually going to be in line with your topic at the moment, but the human
social interaction with the person, the user.
Social interaction, but also just the human mistakes. Like you mentioned, 2 Fat Lardies rules are kind of notorious for being a little hard to find rules in, and there's rules all over the place.
Hey, we reviewed Chain of Command, and we got flamed a little bit by them. So, hey guys, yeah, that's Travis. No, I'm kidding, Travis. I'm kidding.
No, and but it is what it is. But that's kind of the charm of them too. Is it's written by guys who love history. They love games, and yeah, they're
And they're
not
humans.
perfect. I mean,
They're
they make
exactly.
a great game, but their rule books might not be laid out exactly precisely like a computer would do it. But that's part of the charm of the game. It's you know it's made with love, and it's made with gamers and history in mind. I'm sorry, I forgot. I was looking at my notes. I kind of lost the thread on your question.
So the question was like we're talking about in scenarios and campaigns, or if you wanted to. I know you've played the bite-sized campaigns and stuff, and you've seen that. If you were in that creative mood and you wanted to try to add to anything like that, I think to your point, like a kind of a tick against AI would be the World Wide Web connecting all of us. Whether it's rules authors to wargamers or researchers to wargamers. What would be the issue with just really kind of asking that? Would it, even in the work that I told you that I boggled on it, or, that it giving you a draft, would you still, I think you would still lean probably towards, no, Matt, I'd get on the Two Fat Lardies group if I wanted to do a campaign that maybe they don't have out yet, or I'd put in, 30 minutes or a few hours of research on a particular battle or fight I wanted to add to. That would probably still be your default. With everything that we've said still, right? I assume.
Yes, yeah, it would be, and it's not, and part of it's just because that's part of the hobby is reading and learning and discovering things about these historical things, and it's all wrapped up in the painting and the playing, and at least in my opinion, learning about the battles and the generals and the people that are involved in it. I mean, that's, to me, it's part of the whole thing. I can't separate it. And I mean, I've never been in a situation where I've needed to quickly come up with a scenario or anything like that. So, I mean, I write my own scenarios all the time for a lot of games. And to me, that's part of the fun of it, is doing it and then playing it and seeing how it turns out. I've never tried AI to generate a scenario. I actually was, today, I was looking at the Little Wars TV had a video where they
they built one.
They used AI and they liked it. I mean, it came out pretty good, and they had a really good explanation. So it's just not something I've ever done. Maybe I'll try it one day just to maybe get an idea, but I'm not gonna. I'll probably modify it and tweak it and make it my own. But to answer your question, no, I've never used AI.
Well, and that's why I wanted to devil's advocate my point a little bit, and even going in a little bit further on that, like Yorkshire has this great quote where he says, people, are you a wargamer? Are you a painter? Are you kind of like a historian? Like the triad of the historical wargaming hobby. And, for Tabletop Command Post, you're all three. Like, and you probably all three run, there's some that are stronger, maybe months, you're getting a lot more games in, or you're getting a lot more research, but that's part of the fun. And I think with timing, you definitely see a lot of other hobbyists where, and I've been to, conventions where it's like, hey, I just like playing. I don't have the time to read all the books. my job sucks. My family, has a lot of demands. So I could see that as being a tool for them. Windhurst, I think you had something to add to this as well.
So Travis made me think of something that, of something that is lost when using AI to develop scenarios, depending on the type of scenario. If you're using kind of like Alan was saying, how just give me this generic scenario that's not based in the historical actual battle. It's just like, hey, I want random drug bust or law enforcement in a situation, right? It's not associated with anything actually historical. But like we have tried to use it, and like here's this actual battle. I think when you're not going in and doing some of that reading and research, you might be at risk of losing a lot of the context, which can really impact the development of that scenario, especially when we're talking about historical wargaming. Because the AI is not going to give you any of that, right? You're saying, give me a mission, give me a scenario, here's whatever material to reference. It's all right, here's the order of battle, this is what it is, but you lose, I think, a lot of that bigger picture, maybe the campaign or the nature of the armies that kind of make us more invested as historical wargamers. I can see that being a real risk if you focus too much on using AI just to develop scenarios, maybe in a vacuum. If you are read on all that information, you're like, Travis, I imagine since you do so many videos, you're constantly generating your own scenarios, but you're probably very tied into the periods. and you're very aware. So you've already got all that built in. Whereas if someone's going into a period fresh, like, well, I've never done this before, this period, I don't know any of the history, just give me scenarios, they're going to lose. I think they're missing something from the historical side of the hobby by doing that. Like, I can see where it could be a negative.
And we're gonna get to a lot of fleshing out more of the negatives and positive how we use it. I know we've interjected them here on how we're using it now or how we see it used in the hobby now, but we want to talk. I want to shift now again to the little next of how I see it used now, or at least by the people that are using it in the hobby, and then rules and list building. So this one is drafting your homebrew rules, tabletop command posts. I know you do that with like scenarios and stuff. You add to it, or you're trying out scenarios. Like maybe you put something in there that affects the game. Army list optimization. I've seen that a lot. For funsies, I'll say, I've put in army list books and the rules into it, and I said, what's the best army, like in the game? And it'll say, well, you know, it'll ask me, like, what's your play style? Do you like, for example, I put in Hail Caesar, and it was like, do you like a fast play style with, like, heavy cavalry, and, you know, you got a lot of archers, you're going to go Parthia. You know, if you want to play safe and just be normally a juggernaut no matter what and point and click, you're going to go with Rome, or you're going to go. And so I liked how it went through that a little bit, and I see people try to use it. Now, man, does that take a lot of fun out of the game. And then if we had that, nobody would be French partisans or some of these. I'm joking. That's a joke. But the idea is like the probability and balance analysis that it can do for that. I see a lot of people using that. I will say I've gamed competitive a decent amount of my life. I'm not a huge fan of it. I think it's a race to the bottom at the end of the day. I think normally I still run events and tournaments, and my goal is I'm handing out 6 trophies, and the person that wins best sport is getting the biggest trophy prize. If you cannot be an asshole prick, I'm sorry, I told everybody that we wouldn't curse, and we're going to get copyright struck. But if you cannot be a jerk and play and shake the hand of the guy across from you, you're already winning. Like, you're winning at life. You should get the biggest prize. And I try to take the teeth out of some of that. And I've seen a lot of people use it to, I will say, sharpen their competitive teeth for that. You know, that would be the negative side of rules and list building. But I've seen a lot of people use it to some effect where we're saying, hey, I'm read onto the history, like Windhurst had said. I know this is the Wilderness Campaign, or like this is the end of Appomattox. I want to create a smaller skirmish or a cavalry battle or something at the end of it here. I'm going to degrade these guys' morale, or I want to see what that would affect. What would the probability if these guys were down in morale? Run a quick test. And like I've seen people do that to almost test their hypothetical scenarios out. I'll start this one off with Alan. Alan, what do you think about this in rules and list building? Have you used it, or have you seen it as well, kind of from that angle now?
Yeah, I've used it kind of like what I said in the last segment about when I create a scenario, I tell it to also create the army list. But I've used it many times to say, you know, I want to do American elite special forces versus insurgent, untrained, you know, rookies, novices. Give me a balanced force. You know, there's going to be 3 or 4 times more of those guys than there are of the good guys. And again, that's all based on the rules that I've already supplied it with and all the stats that I've already supplied it with. Basically, I'm just using it there to do math. You know, just give me what you think is an equally matched, 2 forces that, can play against each other, and one's not going to wipe the other one out in turn number 1.
A follow-up to that is, Alan, with you using it like that, and I know you get to the table when you can, right? You got a business to run, and you got a lot of other stuff to do. If you've ever played a game where you've had it do that, have you ever seen it get totally way off the mark?
I don't think it's off the mark, but I mean the dice run the game.
Yeah, well, you've never seen it like, hey, give me a good list, and it's like, all right, 6 insurgents to 3 M1 Abrams. This is going to be a great game.
It doesn't screw up like that because again, like I've given it the information. It's the garbage in, garbage out thing, and I think a lot of people that don't know a lot about AI don't understand that it is making decisions based on the information it has or that you give it. So yeah, if I give it, these are the homebrew rules that I'm working on. Mm-hmm. If I give it this rule book and it has all the point values for all the different forces and all the different weapons. And I say, make me a 500-point game with two armies, again, like insurgents versus elite Americans or whatever. It'll do it, and it'll do it right, or damn close.
Well, and before I ship this to Tabletop Command Post, I do the same thing. I think it works a charm most of the time. Now, my issue, and I think it goes back to something you said earlier, Alan, was it's trying to please you. So one of the things I gave it early on, I always send Windhurst my, here's how AI screwed me. Because it definitely wasn't my tactics or my dice rolls. That's not even a question. It was always the AI.
Never.
So I said, build me this Roman army. I want to try to play this battle out and make it to where it's historically accurate. But build me this pointed army. So it prioritized, and I asked the AI later why I got this wrong. It prioritized building this army for me and everything and then pushing it out. When I got the army list, although it was accurate in everything I said, it violated the rules. It kept the divisions smaller than what were required in it. It went down from 4 or 5 units in a division to 3. So it placed a priority on kind of giving me. I said, AI, why did you screw me on this? You make me look like an idiot. And it's like, oh, you told me to try to do it this way. Yes, you're immediately right. I did violate the rule set. Here you go. Here's a new list or anything. But it was interesting to see, that it could be, it's the emperor's new clothes, right? If I'm this great war games designer and I gave it all these things and it told me I right, and I would have thought it was just great if I hadn't play tested it. To switch back to Tabletop Command Post, when you're even rules and drafting your army lists or anything, I know you're gauging it on you've played a lot of games. And I would dare to say, Travis, when you've played as much sharp practice as you have, or bolt action, you're the Neo. You look at the table and everything is now numbers and ones and zeros to you, and you're like, okay, if that piece of terrain is there, I can move 6 inches and 12. And so you're like, this will make a creative fight over this hill, over this valley. When you're trying to experiment with that, is now, you probably have the aversion to using that. Is that part of your process? Is that part of your fun that you wouldn't want to kind of wholesale out?
Yeah, it's going to sound redundant at this point, but that's part of the fun of gaming especially with a game like Bolt Action is, list building is a big part of that game. Not so much in Chain of Command, obviously, but sharp practice, you can build your own list. Bolt Action, that's a huge part of it. That's... Some people, that's the funnest part, is just tinkering with lists and making lists and trying to come up with new ideas. And I know I'm one of those people. I'd like to just get onto their app and just make lists with what I have and kind of dream about how is this going to work against this, and if we were in this situation, how would this work? So that, to me, that's a huge part of it. Fun. Just as much a part of it as doing the research to what color a certain uniform part was or whatnot.
No,
yeah, I don't think I would have AI do a bolt action list for me. I think it's more fun to do it.
Especially, and that's a great comment by both of you, because that's such a big part of that game, right? Where you can really, especially in Russian lists, which every viewer or listener, check out Tabletop Command Post's, spotlight of the Russian art. Beautiful paint job, Travis. That stuff looks amazing. But you can be a horde army if you want to with an army like that, or you can be this elite Soviet kind of scout guards army. So yeah, that's part of the. I do see how that's part of the fun for a lot of people, but I still, as another advocate for, I would say the responsible use of AI would be, man, I've got 2 kiddos right now. I've got a full-time gig. I've got the wife, right? I've got to keep happy and watch some romantic comedy at least, a few times a month or something. So I get the time disparities and stuff like that lean into it, and you've got to penny pinch where you can. But I think you gentlemen bring up good points. What bring people to the hobby, and if you're time poor on one area, I would say there's an advocation to maybe using it in some of that. The last thing that we'll talk about before we get into a little bit more, I'd say the detail, or the last 2 things that we'll talk about, is the hobby support. So I personally have used it for Travis's models are beautiful. GC Mini posts some amazing pictures of their beautiful painted modern models on there. You guys have some impressive collections and stuff that you have. When I take a picture of Alan's painted rook, or if I take a picture of Travis's models, I've seen AI, some style. I'll ask the painter, like, how do you do this? But if, I'm not using Citadel, you can't call it that anymore, it's GW paints now, or I'm using Vallejo, I'll be like, hey, AI, look at this model, give me the Vallejo colors that would match closely. I've seen it be awesome for me in that specific area. What are your, AI-generated art concept? I get it, and I understand a lot of people use it right now, especially in the hobby. That's where we're focusing on. And then miniature inspiration. I honestly don't know for the 3D sculptors that are out there if they're designing them themselves or getting AI to help a little bit. I think Alan maybe can shed some light on that for us. But with all of that hobby support, I'll start with tabletop command post, because I think, again, with you not being a user of AI, would you see any issues, with getting colors, if it could give you a litany list of colors? Like, I don't think that would give you any concerns. You would prefer, I'll say, to call up the painter you've seen the image and be like, hey, what'd you use? What's your technique? Fair?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't know how that AI would even know that. I mean, when you start adding highlight layers and washes and stuff, I mean, it doesn't look like it does straight out of the bottle. So, I mean, if it's right and it's accurate, and you can show a picture of it and say, tell me what these paints are, and it gives you the right answer, that's great. And, that would save a lot of time for sure. But I'm just skeptical of how accurate it can be when you start adding in factors like highlight layers.
Watering 50-50 with, something else.
Weathering. I mean, there's tons of factors that go into what a finished model looks like. And if AI can decipher through all that, then that'd be great.
Well, Travis, not just because you have the, the aversion, I'd say, towards AI, but because you're such a darn good painter. I probably don't need to be asking you this stuff, because you're like triple highlighting when I'm over here like a caveman with like one color base, one color highlight. Done, So you're probably the wrong person to ask for that. I will say, like, as far as the two colors, I normally, with 28s, I'll go 3 to some like special models and stuff. I normally try to stay at 2 colors. It's been pretty spot on for most of the time. I'll tell you, it's gotten some stuff wrong. Alan, what about your thoughts on this?
I have used it for that very thing. I'll find a picture of a vehicle or something. It's got a 3-color camouflage, and I'll just give it to the AI and say, tell me what these colors are in the ammo atom paint line. And it'll give me the stock numbers for those 3 paints or whatever. And it's been very good. That being said, I have an app on my phone called Paint Rack that I use a lot also. I can give it a photo, or I can take a photo of something and say, tell me what is the GW color that's closest to this, and it'll do that. Or I can give it hex values or whatever. But yeah, AI has been pretty good at doing that, because it'll look at the color, it'll know what color it is, and then it'll check all the data it has, from all the different manufacturers, and say, well, that's, forest green from ammo or whatever, and here's their stock number. And yeah, it's been very accurate, and I've used it several times for that.
No, I do think that's a good tool with it. As always, for tabletop command post kind of points, I do try to reach out. I've reached out to Travis a long time ago about his Germans when they were all over that channel, and he's playing his Germans, and like, hey, how did you do this? So, that's probably my code number 1 as well. But man, I found it when I don't know the person, or I found the image on a blog, or it's from a newspaper article. I've used it, and it's just like you said. With the, I want to skip over kind of the last, because we're going to get into a little bit more of the pros and cons and using it. And I think, Alan, you'll have some better things when we get down to some of the other ones. But content creation, because you both are out there in the content world, I think you bring a special kind of a discussion point to this. I want to start with Alan on this one with GC Minis. Again, Alan, I know you don't do a lot of video reports and battle reports and that stuff, but I'll say you have a pretty strong social media presence. I get your emails, GC Minis, hey, people subscribe right now. Use On Patrol Podcast code, and he's going to give you a 50. I'm kidding. That's a total joke. I was waiting for Alan to laugh. But no. Again, Alan uses a lot for advertisements and those things. Going to the content creation kind of piece of AI, I want to focus a little bit here as it's being used now. But Alan, I know you're a one-man shop. Let's talk a little bit about that with this content creation aspect of it.
Okay, well, I have guardrails in place in my own head for what I'll use AI for and what I won't. Like, if I'm publishing photos of products, it's going to be my product. It's not going to be enhanced in any way, even with AI. Now, background images, things like that, I'll take a photo of a tank. This is my model. I built it. I painted it. But I'll put that into Photoshop, and Photoshop has AI tools now. It'll isolate the product, and then I can prompt it for the background I want. I want this tank in a West German 1980s village setting, and it'll create that background for me. But again, everything that I show on my website or in my advertising or whatever, it is always the actual product. That's a line I'm not crossing.
No, that's excellent. And moving to tabletop command posts, again, you have a lot of bolt action videos. Anybody that wants to learn to play bolt action, just watch Travis's videos and you'll get a good handle on it. What have you used AI in anything? I know you have splicing and you do things like that, and you have like cuts, I feel like, with your dice. I want to say I can't remember. I'm thinking a lot about your early videos because they resonate more with me when I was learning the game. I can't remember if you had machine gun sounds or anything, like if you've ever put that in videos or anything. Have you used it in any videos, or that's just straight you cutting and splicing that stuff, no AI?
No AI, man. It's all by hand. Every single edit, every single sound effect, every single cut, it's all done by hand. It takes hours and hours and hours to do, but I know, again, it's part of the fun for me. It's creative. It's okay, what kind of cool thing could I do with this right now? And it's just all part of it. And I would hate to give away any part of that, honestly.
If you have, I don't know if you have a spouse, Travis, or significant other, do you?
I have a girlfriend, yeah.
Okay, so that's good. That's good. That already gives you more bargaining chips, I'll say, with the pot than the spouse. But the idea being is like, I remember you doing those in like 2015, 2016, right? So I assume it was, even as products have gone along, I assume those things have gotten easier. Is the technology feeding you any degree of those things, or you're stripping where you're getting the booms from, or the machine gun shots, or anything else like that, or the edits, or anything from that?
I just find all that online. I've improved the technology I use as far as editing software and cameras and everything. I don't use any AI for any of it.
Are you? I know your audience is going to love that. They're going to be like, yeah, hopefully you get like another 1 million subscribers. Go ahead, Whithurst.
So Travis, for you, so we switched to doing the podcast through this Riverside app because it gave us kind of I was doing all the recording and editing all the videos myself and editing editing software, and it was a lot of work. So mad props. I have a very small inkling of what it takes to do battle reports. I've attempted one or two, and I have a lot of respect for the amount of work that goes in. But this app keeps trying to push like these AI tools for everything, even from like closed caption. Could you ever see something that you don't currently have like that, like a closed captioning option through your editing software, if it was like an AI generated, that you'd be willing to try? Or do you think something's lost by doing that?
Well, yeah, I do. I do think something's lost, and my editing software pushes on me all the time. Honestly, I'm still running, I think it's like version 10, and they're up to like version 18. And they keep wanting, every time I open it, they want me to upgrade to the newest one. But I know the newest one is just full of AI tools, and they're pushing that big time in the editing software. And so I keep telling them no. I'm going to stick with version 10, which was however many years ago, and it does no AI assist at all. And yeah, I'm against AI, obviously.
Well, I was just curious. It's not something I've been willing to embrace, just because, again, kind of that same mindset. I just don't know how much I rely on it or trust it. And do I create more work for myself by having to go back and check, did it do a good job? But having switched to this platform and seeing how strongly it's pushed, I was wondering, as someone who creates a lot of video content, if you were having those same experiences.
Yeah, I'm getting it pushed on me all the time by my editing software that I use, and I just ignore it.
Yeah. No, that makes sense to me. Where it's hard to parse these conversations without really getting into a lot of the meat as we're talking through it. I wanted to kind of see how it's being used right now by you gentlemen, if at all, and then what the purpose is. You know, like you could use it, or your aversion's enough. Let's at least try to put a number on it, Travis, because I think that would help the viewer. So you shoot, let's say, an average battle for you, 2 hours. Is that fair? 2.5 hours?
Are you talking
Playing the game?
The gameplay? Oh no, it's probably 3 or 4 hours of actual real time.
Okay, so three plus, because you got to put in BSing in there and everything else, right? Talking smack. So you say 3 hours of that. How much time are you spending at your computer chopping that stuff up?
At least 7 hours.
So you've got 10 hours in one battle report. Easily,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And what, just to let's push the envelope now, because let's set this mark on the wall, let's push the envelope. What is the longest you've ever had? You know, some that you were really, maybe it was one of those bite-sized campaigns or something, or you're like, man, I want to do this justice, or I just am passionate. I know it doesn't feel like work to you, but let's put a time mark on the longest you've ever edited a video, or you've been into a video, into the bones of it.
Yeah, well, that was not that long ago, honestly. It was a Conflict 47 game. And Conflict 47, bolt action, those are the longest videos to edit because there's just so many clips and a lot of sound effects, a lot of visual effects I use in those as well. And every one of those things has to be lined up perfectly in sync with the sound and the video. So, I mean, I probably spent 14, maybe 10 hours editing that one total, just over multiple days. And then that game was like over 4 hours long in real time as well.
How long was the video you produced for it?
It was probably like an hour and a half, close to an hour and a half.
Hour and a half video, 14 hours. That's a long day. You know, if you're editing over multiple days, but you've got, you know, a good... based on just, again, nobody needs to know your personal life or dox you or anything else like that, but you at least have the ability where you get maybe a couple of hours of hobby a day if you want it. You have that discretionary time, I'll say.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I do.
Wasn't a big lift of it. That's part of the fun for you. Like editing and those things, like you saw it as like it's a labor of love. That makes a lot of sense. I don't know how common that is. That's awesome. Your channel has done amazing. I love it. It's what got me into bolt action. So I will say, like, it's paid off. You've created a drug addict in me. All right. If you want to know, like, hey, are these videos reaching people? Yeah, obviously, right. 18,000 people. So we've talked a lot about just kind of how AI is being used now. What these two guests, you know, how they see AI, and there are either aversions to it or they're, you know, how can we use it and actually produce good results. I want to quickly talk about, it's going to be hard to unravel these things from each other, but I wanted everybody to be able to say, like, hey, positive, negative. So the benefits of AI in wargaming are we've addressed a lot of these with faster research and creation, lower barrier to entry, right? Any monkey like me can get on ChatGPT and look for resources. Inspiration for hobbyists, you know, you can find sources and other things, especially if you're curious about a period. I've done that several times. Support for solo gamers and small creators. I want to talk this here right now with solo gaming. Me and Windhurst, when we originally did this episode, we wanted to talk about AI opponents, and when we get into where AI is going to go in the future in the hobby, it does not work well with more complex games. I started with like Blood Red Skies and, you know, like the Wild West game I had. I put two models on the table, fed it the rules, and put a building there and said, like, hey, you're my opponent. Can you move? I told Windhurst, I was like, man, I need to buy a checkered map or something that could give it more better measurements that that the AI could play against me. I didn't have one of those, so I left like 2 measuring tapes out. I'll post the pictures on the On Patrol website, but I was like, okay, here's your your span. What can you do against me? I'll say very mixed results from even the limited capacity of just a handful of models on the table and it feeding the rules and getting everything right. I think obviously we've seen AI go leaps and bounds with generative AI, so I think that there's some future there, especially for those who are, I'm not saying just shut-ins, but people that don't have big wargaming groups, still like getting to the tabletop. I think that Alan raised his hand, but I think there's some definitely benefits there, and I just think that's a part to say right here for benefits. I think even as rudimentary as it is right now, I think you've got some avenues and increased accessibility to historical wargaming. And then the concerns and criticisms, I'm going to speak for Travis on a lot of these for his ability not to have used it. So we already talked about the accuracy problems to some degree, the hallucinations, incorrect historical details, and the need for verification. So the double check the work, and then creativity and authenticity, fear of this generic content, you lost your handcraft culture, and the debate over the AI art. I love what Alan said about, even if he uses it for the background image, it's not his. Like, Alan's got principles, he's reasonable and rational, like he wants to highlight his product, and to put a backdrop, of Eastern Europe or wherever it is, like that makes total sense to me, and it puts the person that's buying it in that immersion. That makes total sense. We also talked a little bit about some of these things with the economic and community concerns and the impact on artists and writers. I know Alan's going to I'm glossing over these topics because I want to get into your gentlemen's perspectives, and I think they're going to come out, but I at least want to set the stage for when you guys talk about these things. The impact on artists and writers, oversaturation. It was almost like the videos with armies coming to life that Windhurst posted a few months ago were like a sexually transmitted disease. You couldn't be in any historical wargaming group without seeing somebody's 1870s Bavarians or, their Wild West figures come to life and walk down a street, and it was like, okay, this is cool. It's like I tell my 4-year-old daughter, like, Daddy thinks that's cool. All right, let's go over here, distract. But I get it. They've got some coolness to those videos. And then the trust and transparency issues. Like, we don't want anybody to be replaced. I got it. But there's some other kind of ethical things there. So I want to now dive into these perspectives where we really kind of hammer in home other things that we haven't talked about, or we expound a little bit on those uses. So I'll switch to Alan first, kind of with the pro AI view. With everything that we've talked about, and listing some concerns, hearing how it's here now in the hobby and how you've even used it, what's your number one kind of pro AI pitch, and some follow-ups for that? What would you as far as your use of it and those things?
Well, first off, let's say calling myself pro AI feels weird because I don't call myself pro tape measure or pro CNC router or pro electricity. Those are just things I use, to my advantage.
Yep.
So it seems kind of weird saying, hey, I'm the pro AI guy. And I do see problems with it. And a lot of them are like environmental and, regulatory problems and things like that. Those do exist. But I don't think you can blame the AI for those. You can blame the government and, local government and things like that.
Businesses, great point.
Businesses, and just like anything else you hand to somebody, they can use it responsibly or they can use it, irrationally or dangerously or whatever. So, it's kind of weird to be the pro AI guy. But also, just through this conversation, I have opened my mind a little to the concerns of the historical gamers that really like to research, the history and AI getting those things wrong. I don't do a lot of historical gaming. Even when I play Bolt Action, I play Bolt Action because it's a silly, fun game. I don't get too serious about it. And I know a lot of people do, and that's the hobby for a lot of people. It's not for me. I'm into the miniatures and the fun and the dice rolling. So I see the concerns. But where am I going with this? I'm not sure. But it's a valuable tool, as I said, if you use it right. And I keep saying this over and over again, it's all about the information you give it. I mean, if you want, I can go through how I use it in my business and how I don't.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Alan, that'd be great.
Okay, so the thing with AI, and I think a lot of people don't know much about it, and therefore they maybe fear it a little or dislike it just because they don't understand it. Again, it's just a tool. It just depends on how you use it. The way I use it in my business, because I'm a one-man show. I've had up to about 6 employees in this business during COVID. Those were the best years for this hobby. And
I've got a lot of GC Mini products from that time. I could build
you're
terrain.
bored and you're sitting at home locked up, and you spend a lot of money. So I had employees back then. I don't have them anymore. So it's a one-man operation. So I do everything myself. So what AI has done for me is it's allowed me to have a sort of virtual assistant that's trained on everything about my company, everything about my customers, everything about my products. It has access to my websites. It has access to information on my competitors. I've trained, is what's called a custom GTP. You can create a custom GTP and you can train it on the data you want to train it on. And that's what I've done. I spent a lot of time doing that. So my custom GTP, I call it my marketing assistant. My marketing assistant knows everything about me, my company, my products, my competition, my sales, everything is known by this thing, this digital helper. What I do with that is I have conversations with my GTP, not usually voice, it's usually type, but it can be voice. And I can say, look at my line of 28 millimeter modern vehicles. What am I missing right now? And it'll say, hey, you've got this, that, and the other. They all go together. They do this, they do that. But you seem to be missing this one. And I'll be like, oh, right, of course. Yeah, how did I miss that? So it's not performing miracles for me. It's not creating anything for me. It's something to bounce off of. And I call it someone sometimes. It's someone to bounce ideas off of that knows everything about me and my business. And that's hard even with a flesh and blood employee, to get somebody that knows everything. So that's primarily what I use it for. And it works very well for me.
I talked to you previously, Alan, and I loved your discussion point about this that we had, and I wanted to bring this out right now. So I know a lot of, again, I agree with you, pro AI. I don't ask the monkey in the zoo that uses the stick to get the banana, like, are you pro stick guy? But I get it, it's a tool. But the idea being is like, so again, the people on the opposite end of the spectrum, whether they have an aversion to it or just outright like, Greta Thunberg, like, you can't use AI, I'm going to get a flotilla against ChatGPT. But if they have that kind of thought process, like, Alan would have hired a graphic designer or something to do this if he would have. Alan, answer that question in the negative or affirmative. Do you have the time, resources to hire somebody else at your one-man shop?
No.
Yeah.
See, yeah. A lot of the things that I'm having AI do are things that just wouldn't normally get done. So it's allowing me to do more with what I have. Yeah, I'm not hiring a copywriter. I'm not hiring an editor. I'm not hiring a graphic artist. I'm not hiring any of these people because I can't right now. So what AI is doing for me is it's giving me not an advantage, but it's giving me extra help that I quite frankly can't afford to pay for right now. And if I could, I would. Like I said, I've had 6 employees in this tiny little company before, and I paid them well. But that's just not happening right now in this economy. So AI is kind of, it's giving me a little leverage. I have to compete against Warlord Games, Wargames Atlantic, Spectre Miniatures. I got to compete against all these guys. And a lot of them have art departments, marketing departments, research departments, and all that. So it's leveling the playing field a little bit for me.
Well, and I see that you have that business side of it. So you're showing like, hey, in my mind, first of all, rather than Alan just getting 4 hours of sleep or 2 hours of sleep a night, now he can get 4. And
Exactly.
Go back to
Yes. You sleep in.
Yes, with his 4 hours of sleep. But there are Travis. I don't know where he works. I'm going to find out his employer because when I leave the military, I'm coming there. Now, Travis has a life where he has the ability to have a little bit of this discretionary time. I know that people use the discretionary income. I think anybody that watches Travis's shows know that he's genuine. He has a passion and a love for it. It comes through in the videos, and he creates fantastical things. But he's got the ability to do that. Now, looking at you gentlemen using that in your space, and I'm still keeping this on the pro AI side of the conversation, or at least AI curious, we'll call it. But the all wargamers, all hobbyists are not created the same. They don't have time. I see being a huge disparity, even in my local group of 10 people. So we've been running a league the last 10 months, and if you've got younger kids, like soccer games, other things like, hey, can you get the game in? Can you do the research? Can you get to the painting desk? My painting time is like the witching hour. I got to get the kids down at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. Hopefully they wake up, need milk or something. I'm painting at normally 10, midnight, or I'm going for a run. You got to make some hard choices. Rob here, our Windhurst friend, he doesn't know the Army physical training. I've got a big bullseye on my back, right? I got to be able to run fast for my team and to help them out. We do physical training, Rob. I just wanted to say that. I know he's asleep probably on the other side of the podcast. But the idea is like, if you can use this resource to unlock extra time and you're a hobbyist, I don't really see that as a bad thing. And especially if, hey, maybe playing the game, rolling dice against my old friend Alan, my old friend Travis down at the shop for 2 hours a week. Like, I don't really know on the rule sets. I want to bring an army list. I don't want to totally get smoked, or I'd like to set up a battle. I need this, virtual assistant to help me a little bit. I can still afford to put some guardrails on it. But man, I just see that, and I see it in your business that you're saying, like, yeah, it's a competitive advantage for you in the idea that you've got this assistant now that you use with guardrails to help you get the extra hour of sleep a night or get to another project, because Alan, you're a man of many projects and doing a lot of stuff in the hobby world. But I definitely see that as a tool for the discretionary time. What about, especially with, I'll ask Alan this, and where we're still on the AI curious kind of view of it, is AI going away?
No, it's not going away. It's not going away. Did electricity go away? Did the wheel go away?
Yeah, so
No.
it's going to be, any consumer, whether your banking account is using it now, your telephone, metadata that's being sold as you engage in social media and everything else that's filtering through this, there's some degree where it's not going away, but that's a good kind of topic to switch, and we're gonna go back and forth a little bit, but I want to get these views out here, and if Lisa have gotten through a lot of the concerns, I'm going to move over to Tabletop Command Post now. With that, it's not going away. Alan said that, not me, Travis. No, I'm kidding. I said that, Travis. But going, he's like, hey, man, good luck. Sarah Connor's going to be coming to help me, not you, Matt.
Oh, and by the way, it's been around for a while too.
Yeah.
In the 1990s or whenever it was, when you opened up Microsoft Word and you saw Clippy down there saying, "Hey, it looks like you're starting to write a letter. Can I help you?" That was AI.
Yeah.
It was very basic, but
Hey, and the paperclip is a lot less scary than a T1000, Alan. Come on, the paperclip is a lot less scary.
But it grew up. It grew up.
Well, at least, and we won't say anti-AI view. I'll say the aversion kind of towards AI. And again, some of those talking points are threatens artists and authors, reduces originality, encourages laziness, hard to find the middle ground without the erosion kind of the good, and it has no place in the hobby. Or I think, Travis, you would defer that even from this conversation, you see feeding it resources like, hey, there's some places where it could be used, and especially people that are time poor, you probably wouldn't be against them. Like, you would not play with them if they showed up to your table and they had some, at least not right now. Travis doesn't want to be a jerk on this podcast, but he may. But what are you?
Stuff painted. No.
Yeah, as long as your stuff's painted. So you're not playing any Games Workshop game. That's all that tells me then, with the great models. But we go back to the key of your point, Travis, is like kind of your aversion towards it. I know that you get the enjoyment out of all three aspects of the hobby, but your aversion, I think you sit in the majority. The poll says, and the people I've talked to, that you sit in the majority. Do you think with the last statement, I'll say I made it because I do think I agree with it. It's not going away. How does somebody with an aversion towards AI, the T1000 shadow looming in the background, make their way forward in this world with that in the background? What are your thoughts on that? I know that's $1 million question, so
Yeah.
hard to...
Well, I mean, there's nothing you can do about it. So, I mean, I don't know anyone that uses it, and if they are, it's not super obvious. So, I mean, I don't think it's going to be a huge red flag, like, hey, I've used AI for all this. They're just going to show up with their stuff and play a game. I mean, that's a personal thing, how they build their list, how they paint their armies in their own time. That's their thing. Honestly, I don't care how they do it. They show up to the game with a good attitude, and they know what the rules, and they got their stuff done, painted, and everything. They got a good attitude. That's fine. I don't have a problem with it, but I don't want it to become the norm. I don't want AI to be the new thing that everyone kind of falls back on, and kind of like you said, there was some. I don't want anyone to get lazy in the hobby. That's a good way to put it. Is it could lead to some laziness for sure. Like, I don't need to do as much research, but again, not everyone has as much free time as everyone else. So, it is a time saver, and that's kind of something I picked up during this conversation is if you don't have a lot of free time, you could save a lot of time by using AI to do research and figure things out for you.
Well, and I want to pivot now. Travis is very genuine on this. Like, again, 10 hours. All I can think of now is 10 hours editing an hour and a half video. Man, you are the king. That's awesome. That's I'm gonna. You need to show this to your audience. I hope you get a lot more subscribers. Lay in there and do the work if you have the time and you can. I want to push back on some of the points where we've seen things creep into the hobby, and I think that's aversions that we've seen in the past. So like metal, we had metal miniatures for the longest time, and I know you've gamed a long time, so metal goes to plastic. We have 3D printing is on the scene, right? And you have these people that are like, I don't do 3D printing. That takes away from a sculptor making a green. We've heard a lot of that. I'll be honest, I see a lot of 3D printed models on the tabletop. I see a lot of plastic armies now, beautiful plastic armies. One of the ones that I think pushes close to our topic is during COVID, you saw a generation, I'll say, and it went away because I think this is a social hobby. It's the beers over the table. It's the all I can remember is you fighting with Andre during your battle reports, or like or having a gaff with each other, right? Like, oh, your flamethrower missed, or whatever's going on. But one of the things that I really highlighted to me during COVID was Tabletop Simulator. And I still see people use it today where I don't have to paint a model. I put 1,000 minis, right? I saw a Tabletop Simulator game of Waterloo or Leipzig where I snap my fingers, there's 1,000 minis, orders of battle on the table, and I'm playing against a friend. We can pause at any time. We're doing that on the computer. I saw that early on, have its benefit during COVID, right? When we couldn't game, we're navigating it. I still see it to some degree being used today. I'll see people post about it. I know that you would have, and I'm not giving you that crazy hypothetical, right? Like, if you don't kill this kid, the world blows up, right? Would you play Tabletop Simulator? I know the answers to those crazy things, but I see a way where we could reduce to some of that to some degree, and a lot of the passion. I think your passion for the hobby, the fun that you get out of the hobby, that you would hope other people get out of it, whether they're time poor or not. If you got a few painted models that you could do in the 30 minutes, that's great. I'm trying to see for the limit on where you would be against that. I would say if I show up at a table across from Travis with my laptop and I have my printed army list from AI, and then I point my laptop camera at the table and I say, all right, what's the next best move, AI? You probably have an aversion to that, I think, though, right?
I
Right?
would.
Yeah, I might say something.
Playing the robot.
You gotta at least have a mini, at the very
Have
minimum.
have you ever, during COVID, I know especially you on the West Coast, you guys had a pretty significant lockdown. Did you ever dabble in Tabletop Simulator or anything like that?
I've used it before. I mean, I've played bolt action on it a few times. Chain of Command, we've tried it on that as well. But during COVID, we were still gaming. I mean, that's kind of a funny story I like to tell. Is that's when my channel really kind of took off. Was during that
People
time.
are watching it, yeah.
'Cause
Staying home watching
Andre
it.
and I were still gaming, and I like to kind of compare it to Forrest Gump. And when the storm hit and took out all the shrimp boats, it was just Forrest's boat left. And that's kind of what happened with us. Like all the other channels kind of shut down, and then we just kept going. So we were kind of like the Forrest Gump.
That's you're giving no. You make great content, and we see that from the 10 hours that you spend editing videos. So you might have had a little bit of a timing uptick there, but it definitely comes from what you're going and what you're doing in that. But
Right.
when I will say there's a reductive kind of rationale in the hobby where we even see it with companies that are coming out with pre-painted, like Sarissa has pre-painted terrain. I know GC, you've been doing it for a long time, which I love them. The pre-painted terrain, the buildings, they make my time easier. I'm more apt to buy his building right now because I'm like, I just have to put it together. Now, I haven't seen a pre-painted army yet. I haven't seen, I know it's coming. I've seen, if you bought the Britons or something, or you bought a commissioned painted army, right? We see that, but I see this as where, okay, how time poor are you to where that hobby is going to be so reductive to like either some type of ease or AI is almost doing everything. And for me personally, that would be the line I wouldn't be willing to cross. I know based on your answers, Travis, that would be the line that you wouldn't be willing to cross either. Alan, any thoughts on that as well?
Well, you mentioned earlier, I think you called it the gaming triad. People that are into painting, people that are into playing, people that are into doing the research and all that. There are, different kinds of players. And I've found, like with my pre-painted buildings, I do pre-painted, and I even do a couple of pre-painted, pre-assembled buildings. There are people that just want to sit down at a table and play. And they don't have time, or they're not creative, or they don't feel like they're good at painting, things like that. So I think there will be a time where, 3D printing technology is changing all the time, and we're getting pre-colored 3D printed models. There will be a time where, a World War II U.S. Army unit will come out of a printer ready to play. It'll happen. I won't buy it, but 'cause I like painting. But somebody will. And
Yeah.
the hobby is going to change with technology. It's changing now with technology, and it always has. Like you said before, with metals and plastics and CyoCast and 3D printing. In my mind, the end product is the thing. Does it matter if this was 3D printed, or if it was resin cast, or if it was carved out of a piece of soap? If it looks like this and it's usable, does that really matter? My opinion is no, it doesn't matter. The process to get there doesn't really matter. And that's kind of like the way I look at AI a little bit too. The process doesn't really matter as long as the result is good. Unless, like Travis is saying, a lot of us enjoy the process. Hand making things, hand writing things, researching things, whatever. So it's a personal thing. But generally, in a business setting like mine, I don't think the process matters.
No,
I think the end result matters.
Yeah.
And I see people in like 3D printing forums online saying, how much should I charge for my product? I'm like, what's your product worth? They're like, well, no, it costs me this much in filament or resin, and it takes this much time. I'm like, no, that wasn't my question. My question is, what is this worth? You're not selling the process, you're selling the product. And that's kind of how I look at AI. It's just another tool, is what comes out the other end, if it's good or not. Now, if somebody looks at something that's AI generated and says, that's crap, Well, then it is. It's crap then. But it's not crap because it's AI. It's crap because it's crap. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, there will come a time in the future where none of us will be able to tell by looking at something if AI had anything to do with it or not. And then will it matter? It'll matter.
Yeah.
Matter to some people. It won't matter to others.
I think you hit the nail. You very, yeah, I think that's very candid, and I think that's a good point, especially with time. To Travis's point, I think especially a lot of us have been in the hobby a long time, whether you say 90s or beyond, you know, like this triad, especially if you do historical wargaming, is pretty key to some point in your life. And
Yeah.
even if you were a younger gentleman and you had the time to do it, like it's key, right? Travis, your eyes will go, you won't be able to paint at that beautiful standard that you do right now at someday, but you're there, brother, and like I do enjoy the triad. I wish there wasn't so much vitriol on either side of the spectrum, and I think I hope this discussion is like said, like, hey, here's some points for it, here's some points against it, here's some guardrails out there, and kind of use at your own risk, but be cognizant of that. And then I'm not going to judge everybody that they have the ability to make a wonderful channel like Travis's, to paint models and to do that research. And I mean, Travis, you can see it. It's an A+ product. He puts in the time. But I'm not going to judge somebody who's got 80 kids and is like, hey, I've got, you know, I'm doing what I
judge
can.
somebody with 80 kids.
Yeah, you probably, yeah, I will. But they don't have the limited time. The last kind of conversation we move to before we close this out, and we'll move to our last two segments, and I just appreciate you gentlemen. I want to be good stewards of your time, and I hope we've achieved to some degree, you know, what we set out on here is to just have a rational conversation on it, which I think we've done. But the future of AI in gaming, we said it's not going away in those things. I think there's a lot of value in the AI-assisted opponents, the dynamic campaigns and stuff you can come up with, the scenarios as the tools get better and what they can do. I agree. That's going to take away. I think there's a lot of joy in me reading primary sources, like Travis said. The really reason I wanted to talk about AI-supported virtual tabletops. So I want to take us back to the first time we saw A New Hope Star Wars, and when they're playing that chess game on the Millennium Falcon, and you have these holographic monsters fighting each other and killing each other. I don't know, guys. That looks pretty cool to me. If we could have a table and it pop up and be like, okay, this is Travis's campaign he wrote for us. Pop it up, pop the minis, and now I have some frontiersman or maybe a World War II Fallschirmjäger, one of Travis's models, actually running to the woods, machine guns going. I think that would be pretty cool, all right? I don't want to discount that. Travis, you think you're against it still? You're like, no.
No, I think it sounds pretty cool.
That would be cool.
No,
But again,
I can't sell terrain for that, so I don't know how I feel about this.
you'd be against it. You'd be against it. But the last thing that I want to leave with is the continued debate over ethics. And I've already chopped you gentlemen up for a lot of comments on this. I think it's out there. Authenticity and ethics is out there. I think from both of their comments and how they would use AI or they're using it now, I think that's foremost in their minds. And I would just, wherever you're using it, and research those problems that we talked about with the brevity of the conversation on, you know, what is ethically out there. I'll say, you know, we have DoD policy where the human is in the loop in the kill chain. That's policy, right? There is a human there. How reductive do you have to get? This question has been posed to me by law students that are and lawyers who use AI a lot. How reductive would you have to get when? Let's take, what's the name of the driving car? The Waygo. The Waygo right now.
I think so. Waymo.
Waymo. That's it. The driving car. So Travis, you've seen those, I suspect, on the roads. The Waymo or whatever it is, when, you know, we have more people die in car fatalities than gun accidents to this day in the United States. And when you say, okay, we can get to a net zero death if we all use Waymos, or we all do that, right? Take away your rights here and go to this idea. I think there's an ethical, what I've seen people push on the ethical side is we can get to a net zero thing if you let AI generate this. I would caution against that. I have a lot of concerns for some of the people that I say are spearheading it. Where I've seen it in my work is, without saying too much, but giving good hypothetical situations, is we put a rifle, and Travis knows this. I've seen his 10th Mountain patch before. We put a rifle in an 18-year-old's hands. Travis, I was prior enlisted. I might have been the dumbest human being on this earth when I was 18 years old, all right? And we asked them to use the LOAC principles whenever they're deployed and to go through target analysis and everything. When does that become negligence versus some type of automated system that can decipher that? I think that's a great question. I want to leave it there. I don't want any answers, but I just want to leave that out there to say this topic is obviously divisive. It's hot for debate. I think this wargaming hobby is a big tent. It brings people from all over. I would assume that people that buy GC Minis come from different sides of the aisle, different countries in this planet, and I think people that watch Travis's channel, it's the same way. We have a lot in common, a lot more than we think, and I hope this conversation has kind of showed where we can have rational discussions, see other people's concerns, aversions, see our own, blind spots, and, we can continue to pushing it forward. So moving to our conclusion, it provides major opportunities, and there's already good and bad in it with the tabletop wargaming. I'll kick it to Rob real quick for any last-minute comments on AI and the tabletop wargaming, and then I'll kick it to Alan first, and then Travis last. Rob, are you asleep? Have you taken too much Sudafed? Again, Windhurst has been sick a little bit.
Still here.
Okay, excellent.
Barely.
Excellent.
I really appreciate it. Travis and Alan are here to help us, digest this topic. Kentucky and I have both experimented with it over the last couple of years. The biggest thing I think I don't want us to miss on, because I know a few of our listeners, quite a few, are going to be very passionate when we're talking about the big negative, the global negative. We compare AI coming into the hobby space like plastic models and 3D printing. And I very distinctly remember when I got into 3D printing, people being like, "Oh, well, I could have crafted that." And I'm like, yes, I could have crafted it myself as well. But being able to set it to print while I was gone at work and come back and have a finished building that then I just need to paint, and that was a huge time saver. We make that comparison in this, but we don't want to ignore that those things didn't have ethical or environmental impact issues or problems necessarily like AI is. A lot of, I feel like, the response to Kentucky's poll are people like Travis or myself, who are very much, we enjoy all those aspects of the hobby, and that's why we do it. And while some of us will use AI, kind of like I use 3D printing to help shorten the gap in the areas that we just don't have the time for. I think a lot of those people, those are the core elements of the hobby for them, and that's why they have an aversion hobby-wise to AI. But I think it's important to acknowledge as well for individuals like Alan, who, single individual running a business, it's almost like Kentucky said, the 18-year-old isn't negligent. It's almost negligent for someone like Alan not to embrace AI if he wants to stay competitive and be able to keep his doors open. And that's not necessarily on him. That's just the market and the way it goes. Sometimes you get strong-armed into a position where it's like, hey, I can't hire 6 people. Like you said, these things just wouldn't get done. And that could seriously affect the ability of the business to keep running for some other businesses. So I think those are important things for individuals to consider when we talk about new technologies or talk about AI in the hobby, and not just go with a knee-jerk reaction of, well, AI bad, and I don't know why. And that was kind of my, like I said in the beginning, my introduction into this whole thing was I was totally ignorant about the negatives. And so we just want to kind of share all that with everybody so that our listeners and our viewers are armed with the information that I wasn't armed with in the beginning.
No, excellent points. And again, the real global concerns, I would ask you to research If you do feel strongly about some of those, and the best place to change, especially in our system of government in the United States, is on the local level, and that will feed into the top level. Do what you can. I'm not going to even begin to peel back the layers on the amount of variables that are in that, but they're out there. We talked a little bit about them to put some brevity to the conversation, but this isn't the podcast that has all the answers for that. We wanted to talk really about AI in wargaming. So with the kind of the future and any kind of wrapping up points, I'll kick it to Alan first. Any kind of last thoughts on this discussion?
Well, I've actually learned a few things. I think Travis learned a few things. We probably all did. It's a good discussion to have. I think, like I've already said 10 times, it's a tool. Use it or not, and if you do use it, use it responsibly. And there are ethical issues. There are environmental issues, and those will all have to be dealt with. It's not a brand new technology, but it's an exploding technology, and I think it's moving faster than most of us can keep track, and especially faster than the government can keep track. Things will have to happen, but it's not going away. It's here. You can choose not to use it. I mean, there are people that 40 years ago said I'll never use the internet, and they're still not. Good for them. It's fine. But like it was just said, I need it. It helps me. I think I'm using it the right way. We'll see. It's here to stay. Use it or don't. That's
Awesome.
about it.
No, I like it. Very, very matter of fact, Alan. I like it. I'll kick it to Travis for parting shots on this.
Yeah, well, like Alan said, I've learned quite a bit myself on this. I did a little bit of research coming into this, but just hearing personal stories like Alan's story of using it, to keep his business, not keep it going, but to enhance it, to make it better. That sounds like a great use for it. It's an assistant. It does jobs that he can't or doesn't feel like doing possibly. And as far as wargaming goes, I'm still skeptical about using it, obviously, but I mean that's just how I've always been with AI, and that just kind of a knee-jerk dislike of it. I don't like. One thing that I didn't bring up, I will real quick, is the AI art in books. There's been companies that have gotten busted, we'll say, using it, and they apologize at this moment. When they get caught doing it, they apologize, but eventually they're not going to apologize, and then suddenly these beautiful bolt action books that we get with all the hand painted artwork and everything streamed
Peter Dennis,
that's not going to be there. It's going to be AI art because hey, they can save a few grand or whatever for their own pocket by just using AI art. So I think it's important to kind of keep hounding them not to switch to AI and kind of calling them out when they use AI art for anything, just to keep actual art, human created art as part of our lives, not just for saving a few bucks we go to AI. So that's important to me, but I see the value in it. I wasn't aware of just how much control you could have over it by the inputs that you put into it, because I don't use it, but it sounds like you have quite a bit of control over what it gives you by what you put into it too. So that's
at least I think I have that control. T1000 is telling me I have that control right now.
Sounds like it, but maybe they're just trying to lure you into a false sense of security.
Yeah. Matt, plug me into your guns right now. What? Why would you need that? I just told you to ask to write me a scenario. What's going on? No, that's a great point. And the Crimson, I think it's Crimson Desert was the big game that came out that got busted for using it. Had to do a massive apologies. I want to say I saw it in the tabletop get hammered. It was WizKids, wasn't it? It was one of those. Wizards of the Coast. That's it.
When I was listening to some stuff earlier today about it, their name came up a couple times, and they got busted. People call them out on it. They apologize, but there's going to be a day when no one calls them out on it. And they're just going to be like, okay, well, now here we go. We're just using AI now. So,
well, and we're a good self-regulating hobby to some degree, right? Like, I think I would although the poll was 70-30, I think it'd probably be 90% when the person shows up with the laptop and the webcam saying, "Okay, I'm going to let AI fight my battle." Right? We all know, we all have that Rubicon we won't cross. So we really truly appreciate. We wanted to, to the viewer or listener that stayed on here, we're pushing 2 hours, and we got 2 quick segments we'll go to, and then we'll sign off. We just really appreciate Travis and Alan being here. I think they, for the people that know them in the community, they're rational, they're reasonable, and I will say they lean to different perspectives on this, but it was awesome to hear both of them. And, I hope if you follow yourself leaning towards one perspective, you at least kind of hear the other side. Again, one of the things that we wanted to talk about in this episode is just the big tint that the hobby is, and we want it to stay that way. If you paint your, Panzer V, your Panther tank pink, I'm going to give you a weird look, but I'm still going to play with you. We'll have a fun game when it blows up my Sherman. I get it. Maybe you don't paint all your models historical. AI is just kind of another brooch, it looks like, in this hobby as of right now. But I hope we can kind of keep the perspective on that. Any other last minute alibis before we head to our next section? I'll kick it out to the group. Nothing? Okay, awesome. So I asked the 2 gentlemen before we came on, and if they're still thinking of that, I'll use one of my own here, of what's in their kit bag. And so if you've watched this before, we end every episode with saying, like, hey, we use a desk lamp, or this to paint, or we found this paint or this wash to be very good, or this storage case. We've done storage cases before on, Yorkshire Gamer gave it those really useful boxes. As a current service member who has 16 years in and moves a lot, I haven't done this before, but I'm going to say my kit bag, I told the gentleman they could pick hobby thing, anything related, but as I pack up my collection to move again, I'm going to say foam cases. I have done magnetic cases in them before. If you're in the military and you're moving around a lot, they are good, especially for smaller miniatures with heavier metals and things like that. I've gotten armies wrecked. I'm looking at a Civil War army in the corner that has every flag's broke off, metals have gotten bent. There's been a lot of times where foam cases, for me, makes the most sense. I'm a big proponent of foam cases. Foam cases. So, yeah, and I will be moving around a lot in the military. And again, if you don't have I've got a little man cave down here, but if you're gaming at stores or you're always taking your armies around to the hobby shop and stuff, keeping them safe, man. It always crushes my soul when somebody puts it in the KFC barrel, all their U.S. painted Marines or something. I've seen that before, and they're getting chipped and everything, and I'm like, man, I'll give you, the $20 it would take you to go get a really useful box or something. It's horrible to how we treat our minis. But again, any contraption or anything you have in the hobby, I know Alan runs a company, so I'm going to start with him first. Alan, what is something? I
gotta find it.
Something in your kit bag? He's the man that has 1 million MDF creations. All right, what is that, Alan?
This is a periscope.
Oh, sick.
First one of these I built when I was a teenager. I built it out of cardboard. Now I manufacture them and sell them. Just 2 mirrors in there, put it down behind whatever it is, your guy or your tank or whatever, and now you can see it at tabletop level. It's good for checking line of sight. It's good for taking pictures. It's good. It's just good to get a ground level view. You could do it from the edge of your table, by putting your head down, but in the middle of the table, in between a bunch of junk, you could just pop that.
Beautiful, yeah.
Pop
Especially
that
your big urban terrain. Now, the next thing that I want to ask, I'm going to have AI go through your rule set and be like, is line of sight a big deal in his game? Is he just trying to sell periscopes for his rule set? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
The answers are yes.
That's perfect. That's perfect. I've used my old man when we were gaming. He had periscopes a lot, and I'll say the reason we play tabletop over chip-based games is immersion. It's really cool to see Travis's tables, the terrain, the time he spent on all the armies, to see your beautiful modern stuff. And so when you can kind of be in that immersion, and then you're like, hey, what is this guy seeing in the middle of this building, or especially you're playing a modern game, I do think periscopes, used correctly, can bring the game to a... And when I mean used correctly, not by OP gamers that want to argue about line of sight all the time and are... I remember playing in a bolt action event, and somebody was arguing about line of sight with infantry, And I wasn't at the table, but the guy next to me was like, all right, next time I build my army, every model is going to be the prone Russian guy. Like, I'm just going to use all the prone guys and be like, you can't see me. I'm behind this wall. You really can't see me. So I'm going to buy a bunch of your prone models, Alan, so I'll always be protected for line of sight. But awesome nod. Hopefully, use periscopes. I've used them in the past. They're great tool. And to the audience, use periscopes. Travis, what are your thoughts on a hobby tool, something in your kit bag that's elevated your hobby that you couldn't live without?
Well, it's not a tool, it's more of a terrain thing, and that's I've been using just plain sand to do my roads on my tables lately.
Oh, yeah, it looked beautiful.
And it's a game changer because you can make them any shape, any width, any you can match anything in any campaign book, and it's flat. It's not, normally people make roads that kind of sit above, and it doesn't look the greatest, but they're not totally flat. So just some plain old sand sprinkled in the shape you want. You can make any combination of intersections, side roads, widths.
How do you tighten it up?
I mean,
That's something I've always wondered.
I just take it outside and shake it off.
You don't even sweep it up. You don't even sweep it up.
No, I buy a 50-pound bag at the Home Depot for like $10. It lasts me forever. So it's
real fine.
yeah, it's not worth even trying to save it. It's just walk outside and shake it off, and that's it. And then, but that's really I get probably more questions about that than anything on my videos. Is how do you get the road like that? It's like honestly, it's just sand. You just get some sand and make your road with it.
I didn't have 6mm roads when we were doing our Age of Hannibal review, and I used like gravel and ballast and stuff that I had. And I noticed your tables have lips on them, right? Does it have? I can't remember. It has a lip, so you would contain it. But for whatever reason, I left it out, and I had one of the kids come down here and like knock the table. And so I'm still, when I walk in front of one of the bookshelves, I can feel all the ballast that I didn't clean up. So there's some danger, I'll say with that. But it looks beautiful. It is. Yeah. I didn't know it was sand. That's.
Yeah, it's just plain sand, Home Depot sand. The play sand or construction sand. It's super cheap.
So that's an awesome recommendation as well. The way that you're doing battle reports, I'm trying to think, by October, Halloween time, you might have, if you're going to be a Dune character, where you accumulated enough sand outside your doorstep where you keep knocking it off, where it just keeps mounting, and you're like, oh, no, yeah. It may come. But no, excellent. Okay, and the last excellent recommendations, gentlemen. The last segment is scouting report. So we talk about what's on our hobby bench, kind of what's going into the future. While he still has his voice, I'll kick it over to Windhurst to talk to us a little bit about what's on his scouting report and what's in the next steps of his hobby. Go ahead, Windhurst.
So I haven't been super active with my painting and stuff. Life is just, how life is. Life just be lifing. But I've been going through my ancient Greek Syracuse army and trying to build all the units I intend to use for it and get them primed. As well as run a bolt-action escalation league with my local group. And then the same group decided that they really wanted to try Baron's War, which I've had stuff to do since first edition but never got around to, so put a 500-point force together and prime them. But again, I haven't had any chance to get down and do any painting. Coming up, though, every year my kids go spend a month or so with my parents at the family farm. So they're leaving soon for that, about 6 weeks. So I have 6 weeks, no kids in the house. And so that's 6 weeks of knuckle down, get as much painting done as I can with what little extra time I have. So we'll see how much I can actually get accomplished in that time. Well, that's it for me.
Awesome. I'll kick it over to Alan first for what's kind of in your next 30 days, short-term goals, and any inside scoop you want to give us about what GC Mini has got in the pipeline next. So I'll kick it to you, Alan.
Okay. As far as what we have next, I'm continuing on with the 28mm modern vehicles. You guys will be the first to hear it. We're doing Patriot missile launcher.
Oh, awesome.
Stowed, deployed, and tow vehicle. So that's coming up. For me personally, I'm working on Spectre Miniatures just recently released U.S. Army Rangers, which I'm painting up right now, and they also, through their Patreon, released the same set of miniatures in baseball caps. So I'm working on those as well. And I'm painting them up non-specific era, but I'm leaning towards when I was in the Army in the 80s, we had the BDUs, and I'm doing that camouflage scheme on them, and they're coming out looking pretty good. So that's what I've been working on.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And then I'll kick it to Travis for what's the next battle report coming out? What's on your hobby painting desk? What's the next few things?
Well, battle report wise, well, we got the 4th of July sharp practice game. We do that every year. But I guess Conflict 47 came out with a new book, and finally got everything built for one of the scenarios in that. Got some new winter World War II stuff. A good friend of the channel sent me a bunch of chindits, so we got to do some
Jungle.
Pacific jungle stuff. So we got a lot of stuff that we're working on as far as battle reports. Hobby wise, I'm kind of right in the middle of a Soviet, kind of an impromptu Soviet army that I randomly started. I just bought one day and just running with it. We're upgrading our Soviets. We're adding a bunch of color to it with naval and NKVD, and we're going to go for Stalingrad, buying a bunch of new terrain. So we're going all in on the the Ost front.
Well, people that
for that.
yeah.
It's pre-painted, right?
Yeah, it's pre-painted. Hey, you got 10 hours. You better paint that, Travis. I want to see you paint that. No, Travis just released a video on Tabletop Command Post. He's got a beautiful kind of highlighting, I think, some of the Russian stuff that you're doing there. I mean, those models are... I already have a Russian 28mm model army, but you make me want to go back to it, because I think you've had one as well, and you're just revamping, with the newer, better models. So yeah. That's awesome stuff. My last shout-out before we sign off here is... Please subscribe to GC Minis, to Tabletop Command Post. These gentlemen are champions in the hobby. You won't meet better people. I hope you found that from this conversation. Although we may have differing views on leaning against aversion or AI curious here, like we had a rational, reasonable discussion. I think these gentlemen are living proof it can be done. Don't listen to all the vitriol you see online and those things. Like, if you have an aversion to it, at least understand the other side, or if people are time poor or what's going on with them, and then make it known. Make your aversions known, or if you feel you're the expert. Again, this conversation was never about expertise. It was about your general practitioner in the hobby, your general hobbyist. What are their left and right limits, and what can they afford, and just to make sure that knowledge is kind of out there. So please, Tabletop Command Post, GC Minis, look at their stuff. They're amazing. They've been in the hobby for a minute, and please give them subscribe, everything. On my hobby, my scouting report, we're wrapping up a 6-month bolt action league. The best thing about the military is every time I move, I get to go to a new location. I meet a new group of people. That's why I love this hobby. They have the same shared passion. We play games, we roll dice, we have laughs. And we've got a 24-player league here in Virginia about to wrap up in June. And then I'll be headed to the Midwest and Kansas. Me and Windhurst had a horrible, stupid idea, as every wargamer does, about, I can get this project done in that amount of time. And my goal, me and Windhurst were going to do Bunker Hill in, Epic and 15mm. And we were like, that'd be easy to do. The models are easy to paint, and it'll be a lot of time. And, it's just a few hundred models, as every lie a wargamer tells herself. And that's what I have done for Bunker Hill. I've got 80 British done, and that's it. And they don't even have a flag on them. So it's a race to the bottom on before the military moving truck gets here. Will I have more models to put into that, and before it gets packed away? But stay tuned. We do plan on some more episodes of On Patrol coming up. We've got some good battle reports to do for the 250th. As we look into engagements, we plan to have a theme to that. And then definitely give Travis's. I've watched that battle report they do all the time, and his colonial stuff and continental stuff is amazingly painted, and it's a hoot to watch those videos. So Travis will be my inspiration as I'm continuing to paint. at a subpar standard than him. But without further ado, I'll kick it back to you guys. One last comment. Any other last comments from Rob, Alan, or Travis?
I just want to say thanks for having me here. Cheers to all of you.
Cheers. I got Diet Mountain Dew right now. I don't, Travis has, we'll say he's got bourbon in his water bottle or whatever he's got there. But Rob, any last parting shots as well?
I always appreciate getting the chat with, you know, with you guys. It's one thing we're always saying. We love the podcast has given us the opportunity to meet, you know, great war gamers and, you know, highlight. Even if we didn't get to do a focused highlight on what it is you do, but the opportunity even to speak with you all we wouldn't have if we weren't getting to do something like this. So we appreciate you taking the time to come on and you know, chat with us.
Thanks so much, gentlemen, again. And again, just keep the discussion going. Be reasonable and rational, and I hope you know, hope everybody out there continues to connect and has a good time. So without any other further ado, pushing the mark and being good stewards of their time, we appreciate the viewer for listening. Continue to engage with us. Show us what you're working on. Show us what's in your kit bag, what's in your scouting report, and we look forward to talking to you. We got some surprises in store as far as guests and next topics. So with that being said, grab your shield, your spear, your belt-fed machine gun, and join us on the next episode of On Patrol. All right, dismissed.